The skies over France, 1940, dawn breaks, and the rumble of engines fills the air. German bombers, the dreaded Heinkels and Dorniers, swarm toward Paris. Suddenly, cutting through the morning haze, a group of fighters roars in to intercept. Their wings gleam in the sunlight, and their speed stuns the Luftwaffe pilots. But there's something strange. These planes aren't British. They're not even French. They're American. This is the incredible story of the Curtiss P-36 Hawk, the fighter that raced into war before America ever fired a shot, and stunned the Germans with its lightning speed and agility. A plane born in the United States, but baptized in European fire. A fighter the world underestimated, until it proved everyone wrong. Number 1. The world before war, the mid-1930s. A time of transition. Biplanes still rule the skies, their fabric wings and open cockpits, a lingering symbol of the First World War. But a storm is brewing. In Germany, a man named Adolf Hitler is secretly rebuilding the Luftwaffe. In Britain and France, the governments scramble to modernize their outdated air fleets. And in the United States, aviation companies compete fiercely to sell their newest designs, even as the country remains politically isolated. One of those companies is Curtiss, right, led by a visionary engineer named Don Berlin. Berlin believes the age of biplanes is over. He wants to build a monoplane fighter that's fast, aerodynamic, and made entirely of metal, a design that can face the future. And so in 1934, the Curtiss Model 75 is born, sleek, clean, and unlike anything flying in America at the time. Number 2. The birth of the Hawk. The Model 75, later known as the P-36 Hawk, was a radical leap forward. It had a smooth aluminum skin, retractable landing gear, and an enclosed cockpit, revolutionary features for the mid-1930s. Under the hood sat a Pratt & Whitney R1830 twin Wasp engine, capable of pushing the plane to 313 miles per hour. At a time when most air forces were still flying biplanes struggling to reach 200 miles per hour, that was lightning, fast. In 1937, the U.S. Army Air Corps tested it, and they were impressed. They ordered more than 200 of them, designating it the P-36A. It was agile, powerful, and reliable, but by the time it entered service, the world had already moved forward. Newer fighters like the P-40 Warhawk and Supermarine Spitfire were on the horizon. The P-36, though innovative, seemed destined to be overshadowed, until Europe caught fire. Number 3. America stays out. France steps in. When the war erupted in September 1939, the United States stayed neutral, but that didn't stop American companies from selling planes overseas. France, desperate for modern aircraft to counter the rising Luftwaffe, placed a massive order for the P-36, renamed the Curtiss H-75 Hawk. The French loved it. It was easy to maintain, fast, and far superior to many of their outdated fighters. By early 1940, over 100 Hawks had reached French soil. French pilots trained hard, preparing to face the inevitable German invasion. They nicknamed the aircraft Le Hawk. When the invasion finally came, no one expected what would happen next. Number 4. The Germans meet the Hawk. On May 10, 1940, Germany launched Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War. Panzer divisions rolled through Belgium and the Netherlands. The Luftwaffe swept the skies clear ahead of them. But over the French countryside, the Curtiss H-75 Hawks rose to fight. At first, German pilots assumed they were outdated French planes, easy kills. But when the Hawks dived from the clouds, the Luftwaffe found themselves outmaneuvered. The H-75's tight turning radius and rapid climb rate caught them completely off guard. Despite being slightly slower than the Messerschmitt Bf-109, the Hawk could outturn it in a dogfight. In one engagement, Captain Marcel Albert and his squadron shot down 5 German aircraft in minutes. French pilots adored the plane for its balance, visibility, and forgiving flight characteristics. Even when outnumbered, they could twist and roll their way to safety. By the time France fell, Curtiss Hawks had scored 230 confirmed kills, more than any other French fighter type during the campaign. It was an American aircraft that gave the Luftwaffe its first real surprise of the war. Number 5. The plane that traveled the world. After the fall of France, many surviving Hawks were flown to North Africa, or captured and reused by the Germans themselves for training. But the Hawk journey was far from over. In Finland, the plane gained a new reputation. When the Soviets invaded during the Winter War, Finland used H-75s, bought through indirect channels, to fight back. Finnish pilots achieved an incredible 12-to-1 kill ratio against Soviet aircraft. They called it their miracle fighter. The British Royal Air Force also used the Hawk, renaming it the Mohawk, for operations in India and Burma there. It faced the Japanese Army Air Force, proving again that its agility and ruggedness made it a reliable fighter even years after its design. In total, the Curtiss P-36 and its variants served in over a dozen air forces across 4 continents. It became one of the most exported American fighters of the pre-war era. Number 6. Pearl Harbor, an unexpected hero. December the 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. As Japanese bombers screamed down upon the U.S. base in Hawaii, most American aircraft were destroyed on the ground. But not all. 2 U.S. pilots, Lieutenant George Welch and Lieutenant Kenneth Taylor, managed to scramble their P-36 Hawks from Halaiwa Field. They raced into the sky and engaged Japanese aircraft head-on. In just a few minutes, they shot down 6 enemy planes, among the very first American aerial victories of World War E. Type P-36, though already outdated by then, proved it could still fight. It had one last moment of glory, defending the homeland it was built to protect. Number 7. The Forgotten Legend. By 1942, the P-36 had been replaced in most front line units by the newer Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, but its influence lived on. The lessons learned from the P-36's design directly shaped the development of the P-40, which went on to become one of the most famous American fighters of the war, flown by the Flying Tigers in China. And while the P-36 faded from the headlines, pilots who flew it never forgot it. They called it a pilot's airplane. Simple, stable, responsive, a fighter that made you feel invincible, even when the odds weren't in your favor. Number 8. The Legacy of the Hawk. Today, the Curtiss P-36 is often overshadowed by more famous fighters like the Mustang, the Spitfire, or the Messerschmitt, but its story remains one of the most remarkable in early aviation history. It was a plane built too early, yet always at the right place. It fought under more flags than almost any aircraft of its time. It helped France resist the Blitzkrieg, Finland survive the Soviet invasion, and the Soviets defend Pearl Harbor. And perhaps most astonishingly, it even flew under German markings for training, a captured symbol of irony in the skies of Europe. For a fighter that many dismissed as obsolete, the P-36 proved one thing again and again: speed and courage matter more than fame. Number 9. The Hawk that taught the world to fly fast. When Curtiss engineers first tested the Hawk in 1935, few believed a radial engine fighter could break past 300 miles per hour, but it did, easily. And in doing so, it set the stage for the next generation of American air power. It taught designers about streamlining, retractable gear, and cockpit ergonomics. It trained the first wave of American pilots who would go on to fly P-40s, P-47s, and P-51s. In many ways, the Curtiss P-36 was the bridge between 2 worlds, the last of the old and the first of the new. It was the moment aviation crossed from fragile biplanes to the thunder of true modern fighters. Number 10. The Final Takeoff. Today, only a handful of Curtiss P-36 Hawks remain, preserved like relics of a vanished age. Their polished aluminum skins gleam under the sun, their propellers spinning with the same defiant rhythm that once filled the skies before the world was consumed by war. When they lift off during air shows, the sound of their Pratt & Whitney radial engines, that deep throaty growl, cuts through the air like a heartbeat from another century. It's not just noise, it's remembrance. The P-36 belonged to a time when flight was still wild and uncertain. Pilots who flew them often did so on instinct, relying on courage more than instruments, and skill more than luck. They fought with machines that demanded everything: strength, focus, and nerve. Every takeoff was a risk, every mission a wager between life and death. And yet the men who flew the P-36 turned those odds into victories that defied logic. Though later overshadowed by its famous successor, the P-40 Warhawk, the P-36 Hawk laid the foundation for what came after. It introduced the streamlined, all-metal fighter design that shaped the air battles of World War II. It taught engineers how to balance power with agility, and it taught pilots how to fight smarter, not just faster. Today, when one of these rare aircraft rises into the air, it carries more than its own weight. It carries history. It's a living tribute to the early aviators who dared to push the limits of technology and bravery in equal measure. The Curtiss P-36 Hawk may not have been the fastest nor the most celebrated, but it was the spark that lit the fire of American air power. It proved that with speed, skill, and surprise, even the underdog could win the sky. And as its engines fade into the horizon one last time, the echo of that lesson still lingers, proud, resilient, and free. Conclusion: when the Luftwaffe first met the Hawk, they thought they were facing an easy kill. Instead, they faced a fighter that could twist, turn, and fight with grace. It didn't matter that it was American, French, or Finnish. The Hawk belonged to anyone brave enough to fly it. And in a world racing toward destruction, one aircraft, built in peacetime America, became a lightning bolt that briefly turned the tide. The Curtiss P-36 Mohawk, the fighter that took everyone by surprise.